course, when we are in desperate need of a hero, we think of leaders like Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Harry Wong, Batman, Benjamin Franklin, Albert Einstein, and so many more. But let me ask you this question. How will Batman save the United States from falling into the technology gap? Can Obama visit every single school and visit with every single teacher and motivate them to use technology? Would be pretty awesome, but very unlikely. In every school, there are superheroes. Yes, you heard me correctly. There are superheroes. But instead of capes and tights, they're wearing phones on their hips and Bluetooth in their ear. But let me tell you what, they get the job done. They go in and they help to lead teachers in using technology to one day be an instructional technology leader. But it seems to me that I'm really going to have to become an ultimate superhero. So this video is all about my super duper top secret technology plan for becoming a superhero leader for IT. To me, being a great leader means knowing your stuff, and I'm talking about the history of instructional design and technology. Yes, I'm going to get a whole lot of questions of what exactly is instructional design and technology. Well, with the help of one article by Robert Reiser, I'm able to go over with you very briefly on the history of instructional design.
It's time to go back in time to see the history of instructional design.
Can you believe that instructional design procedures were first introduced to research to train military services? Thanks to the works of Robert Gain, Leslie Briggs, and John Flanagan, they established influences for instructional principles that came from research and theory on instruction, learning, and human behavior. They were able to select personnel that would most likely benefit from particular training programs. Through trial and errors, they were able to develop tests and tasks. They were also able to increase the percentage of those who successfully completed the program. The American Institutes for Research was established to continue to solve instructional problems. Even famous psychologists like B.F. Skinner wrote that programmed instructional materials. It called for small steps, frequent questions, and feedback, as well as self-pacing. Feedback would be positively reinforced. Thus, in the mid-1950s through 1960s, instructional design began to take an empirical approach in which problems were solved by looking at data in order to revise those weaknesses. In the early 1960s, instructional design began a new revolution, and popularization of behavior objectives became norm. Even though Ralph Tyler wrote about behavior objectives in 1934, he is still credited for the behavior objectives movement that took place in the early 1960s. Robert Mager wrote Preparing Objectives for Programmed Instruction to help teachers write objectives that is a description of the desired learner behaviors, the condition under which is performed, and the standards that the behavior is to be judged. Of course, Benjamin Bloom went on to future objectives by saying that there are various types of learning outcomes, and in his book, Taxonomy of Educational Objectives. Also in the 1960s, the emergence of criterion reference testing, which measured how well an individual performed on a particular behavior or set of behaviors, irrespective of how well others perform, and they can also be used to assess student entry-level behavior. The Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik led to the United States pouring millions of dollars into improving math and science education. Formative and summative evaluation allowed instructional materials to be evaluated at different stages. By 1970s, instructional design models were increasing in different branches such as the military, graduate programs, and also in other countries such as South Korea, Liberia, and Indonesia. Unfortunately, in the 1980s, instructional design had minimal impact on instruction in public schools and higher education. Many higher education organizations were disbanded as those researchers were unable to answer why instructional design was unsuccessful. Microcomputers helped to turn the nation's attention back to computer-based instruction. As we head into the 21st century, there are still many influences for instructional design. There are major factors that continue to influence the field, and they include 1. Performance technology movement. This means that poor technology or lack of training was not the cause of performance problems, but instead things like the work environment. Thus, incentives help. 2. Constructionism. This helps to solve complex and realistic problems by working together and by taking ownership of the learning process. 3. Electronic performance support systems. This provides workers with the help they need to perform certain job tasks in a timely fashion. 4. Rapid prototyping. This allows researchers to go through a series of rapid tryout and revision cycles until an acceptable version of the product is produced. 5. Internet for distance learning. Programs must be carefully designed for these learners. 6. Knowledge management. Instead of one or few individuals with the knowledge, instead, people would establish a database for allowing everybody to learn.
Now for the history of instructional media, not to be confused with instructional design, which are two totally different things.
What is instructional media? Well, it is a concept that tends to start off with a whole lot of enthusiasm, but then quickly dies when the results are not as everyone expected. Instructional media is defined as the physical means via which instruction is presented to learners. Well, let me tell you something. This idea started about a century ago. In 1905, this idea began with the first school museum in St. Louis. This supplementary curriculum materials, but it will not replace the teacher and the textbook. Next, we have the visual instruction movement and instructional files. These included magic lanterns and stereo optics. The motion picture projector was the very first media device used in schools. Audiovisual instruction movement and instructional radio began with the very high hope that radio would revolutionize education, but it had very little impact. During World War II, audiovisual devices were used exclusively in the military. Over 400 training films and 600 film strips were created, and more than 4 million showings of films took place between 1943 and 1945. It was seen as very successful, and they hoped that it would be able to translate into a classroom where there was diverse backgrounds as well as in the military. Unfortunately, after media comparison studies, students learned equally well regardless of type of presentation. During the 1950s, the Federal Communication and Ford Foundation's funding decided to set aside television channels for educational purpose, and by 1960, there were over 50 stations. Over $170 million was spent on educational television, and by 19 was instruction in all major subject areas and all grades. But by 1960s, enthusiasm waned due to the quality of the videos. Many schools discontinued instructional television. By January 1983, computers were being used in more than 40% of all elementary schools and 75% of all secondary schools. But still, the microcomputers had minimal impact. There had been an increase in distance education courses in higher education. An increased presence of technology doesn't mean an increased use of that technology for educational purposes. Sure, you can give a teacher a computer, but you can't make them effective at it. This is why I need to become a super instructional leader. No fear, I am here. What you need is a full-range leader, and I'm your person. Being a leader is a pretty big deal. Effective leadership has an imperative role in the better performance and growth of the organization. According to some theorists, like Brandt, there are two types of leader: transformational leaders and transactional. They sure sound similar, but they're different. There are 4 types of characteristics that describes a transformational leader. First, transformational leaders tend to be charismatic. Second, they're inspirational. They tend to motivate their workers through support, and they also motivate workers on a day-to-day basis. Third is intellectual stimulation. Individualized consideration. This means that there is a degree of personal attention and encouragement of self-development a leader imparts to the employees. Bass said that transformational leader is when employees could rise above their own self-interest and give extra effort. Atmosphere is conducive to knowledge creation, sharing, and exploitation. Transformational leaders push boundaries, stretch goals, and encourage workers to share knowledge with one another. They also set high performance prospects. In the 2002-03 study from the Hong Kong study, I was carried out by the Business School of Lincoln University. There was over 194 participants. This confirmed that positive association between transformational leadership and leadership outcomes were reported in literature review were consistent with the findings from these studies. Meanwhile, transactional leaders are seen as not as charismatic. They have consistent performance that meets agreed upon goals. They also give rewards and punishments based on performance. They develop clear, specific goals and ensure workers to get their rewards that are promised. They also exchange rewards and promises for worker effort. They also have a responsible to the immediate self-interest of workers of their needs to be met while getting work done. Unfortunately, workers are not always motivated underneath transactional leadership. They may leave, employees may start their own business or may leave to go into an environment that is more challenging. Transactional leaders may tend to overemphasize goals, rules, and policies. They would be less likely to accept ideas that go against existing plans and goals. Transactional leaders provide a more stable environment with slight competition. Now, transformational and transactional leadership should not be seen as contrasting style of leadership. because some people tend to be both. Sure, peanut butter tastes pretty good by itself, and so does jelly. But isn't it so much better when you put them together? Well, according to Ponder, you can be both transformational and transactional leader. This theory is called full-range leadership, and this is the type of leader that I would want to aspire to become, because why do you have to have one over the other? I like the idea of motivating individuals with charismatic and also by having collaboration with the people that I work with, but also by having goals and standards for my employees to meet. Also, too, transformational leadership is teachable, and with the use of MLX subordinates and is teachable with the use of MLQ. An individual can rate on a transformational scale. As a leader, I would want to incorporate the 4 primary modes of creating new knowledge. I would want to have socialization in which people would share their experiences with one another. 2 is externalization. This is when tactic knowledge turns into explicit concepts by using metaphors and analogies. 3. Internalization, turning explicit knowledge into tactic knowledge. And 4. Combination, combining 2 sources of exert knowledge. It's time to break down those barriers that teachers have over technology. Peggy Emter describes first-order barriers as extrinsic to teachers and include lack of access to computers and software, insufficient time to plan instruction, and inadequate technical and administrative support. Second-order barriers tend to be more fundamental and personal. They are intrinsic to teachers and include beliefs about teaching, beliefs in computers, established classroom practices, and they can oftentimes be more difficult to change than first-order barriers because they are more personal and deeply ingrained. By becoming a full-range leader, I would be able to help these teachers break down these barriers by allowing individuals to work together and by setting clear goals. In the article, Impacts of a University Elementary School Partnership, teachers need progress through a series of stages from non-user to expert user. Once an innovation has been introduced and initial training completed, the intended users will put the innovation into practice. Oh no, that's not going to work. So as a leader, I should provide the following areas of support. They include administrative, emotional, instructional, technical, and professional. Or, as one study looked at the university-school partnership, this entailed training a group of students to serve as technology resources for a school to maintain change. Perhaps I will take a tip from the research that began in the fall of 1995 in a Midwestern university. Due to the positive and engaged interaction, Project START was developed the next year. It provided professional support, instructional support, and technical support, desktop management, word processing, drawing applications, and the internet. The teacher participants survey indicated that they were more comfortable after the training than they were before. There was also an increase in technology use by teachers, even though it didn't change any instructional processes. Students also felt more comfortable, and there was also an increase in self-worth and motivation. As an IT leader, time is so valuable, and so are resources. Instead of spending time looking at individual universities and programs, there is an easier and simpler way to find out what instructional technology programs is going on. The system is called IDT, Instructional Design and Technology Program Information Tool. This allows for universities and colleges in the field of IT to easily share and review practices from one another. It currently includes program overviews, admission policies, master's comprehension procedures, doctoral qualifying, and comprehensive examination procedures. It allows a person who is searching to click in one place instead of visiting each different website. Almost like a one-stop shopping area. Yeah, you're thinking like Walmart. What genius mind established such a simple but important website? Well, it developed in May 2004 during the Professors of Instructional Design and Technology. Over 25 other faculty members thought it sounded like a pretty darn good idea. And by September 2005, the site was completed and shown off during the annual AECT conference. Now, over 25 programs enter their information onto the site. The five assumptions that surrounded the molding of the IDT Program Information Tool included that it should require little effort. 2. Current information should be maintained and should be easy to upload data. 3. Material that is available would be those that people are interested in. 4. It is viewable by individual institution and by topic area. And lastly, administrative component would be needed to monitor such a system. And this concludes my ultimate top secret super duper plan on how to become an IT superhero. Well, I guess it's not top secret anymore. I plan on using my ultimate tool belt to have direct connection to an IDT program tool. I also will use full range leadership shoes, and to have other people follow me, I plan on studying the history of IT design and instructional media and chop down those barriers and help teachers overcome them. Thank you. And I think I hear a teacher crying, "I must go now!" Oh, did I mention I am looking for a sidekick? So contact me if you want to be a leader, superhero, just like me.